Good afternoon. Could I have your full name, please?
Yes, my name is Eugia. You can call me Gia.
Thank you, Gia. Let's talk about where you live. What do you like about your neighborhood?
I live in Songdong-gu in Seoul. It's not super famous, but, it's got this nice balance of old alley neighborhoods and newer cafes. I'd say that's what I like most about it, actually.
Is it generally a quiet or noisy area?
Mostly quiet, especially on weekdays, but weekends can get a bit loud. There's this small park nearby that families use, and kids kind of take over.
And do you prefer busy places or quieter ones, usually?
It depends on my mood. For working or studying, quiet for sure. But for like a Saturday afternoon, I actually enjoy a bit of buzz. It makes me feel more awake, if that makes sense.
All right, Gia. Now, I'd like you to talk about a topic for 1 to 2 minutes. You'll have 1 minute to prepare. Here's your card. Describe a place you visited with a lot of noise. You should say what the place is, when you went there, who you went with, and explain how you felt about the noise. You can start speaking whenever you're ready.
Last Saturday, I went to Gwangjang Market in downtown Seoul, and honestly, it was sensory overload from the moment we walked in. I couldn't hear myself think over the crowd. It's one of those markets that's just bustling with activity, all day, every day. I'd say it gets something like 60,000 visitors a day now, which is, it's a lot. We went around lunchtime, which was maybe a mistake or the best decision, depending on how you look at it. Everyone's shouting orders, "Vinde tok here, Maya kindag fresh," and the cooks are like banging their ladles on metal pans, which creates this rhythmic clatter. And in the middle of all that, you've got tourists filming with their phones, influencer types doing TikTok dances, and older ajimas negotiating loudly in Korean. So it's a real mix. How did I feel about it? Honestly, I loved it for about 40 minutes. After that, I'd say it was a bit much, and we had to step outside for some air. So it's one of those places I can only take in small doses. But that energy, that live-in atmosphere, you can't really find it anywhere else in Seoul,
Would you like to visit that place again?
Yeah, definitely. Though, not at lunchtime maybe. I'd probably go on a weekday morning next time when it's a bit quieter. That said, part of the appeal is the chaos, right? So, I'll be back for sure.
Let's talk more generally about noise in cities. Do you think cities are noisier now than in the past?
That's an interesting one. I'd say yes and no, actually. On one hand, cities have way more traffic, construction, delivery scooters, especially in Seoul, where motorbike delivery is huge. But older cities had live animals on the street, blacksmiths, street vendors shouting all day, that kind of thing. So maybe the noise was different in texture, but just as loud. I'd argue the biggest change is that modern noise is more constant. It doesn't really stop at night.
And what kinds of noise do you think are hardest for people to ignore?
I think unpredictable noise. Like a construction site you can get used to. It's rhythmic. Your brain tunes it out. But a car alarm going off at 3 a.m. or a dog barking randomly, that kind of stuff is impossible to filter. That said, I think it also depends on the person. Some people, like my grandmother, she can sleep through anything. Me, not so much.
Thank you, Gia. That brings us to the end of the speaking test.
All right, nice work there, Gia. Before we wrap up, let's go back and look at a few of the expressions you used. I want you to really lock these in.
Yes, please. I'd love to get these down properly.
First up, sensory overload, a state where too many sights, sounds, or sensations are hitting you at once, a specific upgrade from overwhelmed. Last Saturday, I went to Gwangjang Market in downtown Seoul, and honestly, it was sensory overload from the moment we walked in.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember saying that.
And one more example to bank. Walking into Shibuya Crossing at rush hour is sensory overload in the best way. Lights, sounds, and crowds all at once.
Oh, favorite teacher chatting with a student. I couldn't hear myself think. A fixed idiom meaning the noise was so overwhelming you couldn't concentrate, folds hearing and thinking into one image.
I couldn't hear myself think over the crowd.
That one just slipped out, honestly.
And one more example to bank. The concert was so loud I couldn't hear myself think, let alone talk to my friend.
Bustling with activity, full of energy, people, and movement, a vivid collocation that replaces very crowded.
It's one of those markets that's just bustling with activity, all day, every day.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of that one.
And one more example to bank. Myeongdong is bustling with activity every evening, especially during the tourist peak season.
Ha! That said, a discourse marker introducing a contrasting point without hard disagreement nuances your previous claim gently.
That said, part of the appeal is the chaos, right?
I didn't even plan that. It just felt natural.
And one more example to bank. I generally prefer quiet cafes. That said, a bit of background noise can actually help me focus.
Good afternoon. Could I have your full name, please?
Yes, my name is Gia. You can call me Gia.
Thank you, Gia. Let's talk a little about technology. Do you use technology a lot in your daily life?
Yes, quite a lot. I use my phone for almost everything. Messages, maps, ordering food. I also use my laptop for work, so I'm on some kind of screen most of the day, honestly.
And do you remember the first piece of technology you learned to use?
I think it was a desktop computer at home. I was maybe 7 or 8. I mostly used it for, simple games. It felt really exciting back then.
Now, I'd like you to talk about a topic for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you'll have 1 minute to prepare. You can make some notes if you wish. Here's your topic. Describe a piece of technology you find difficult to use. You should say what it is, when you used it, why you found it difficult, and explain how you felt about using it. Please begin when you're ready.
I'd say these big touchscreens you use instead of talking to a cashier. They're pretty much everywhere now, and I used one last month when I went for lunch with my friend. The thing is, I couldn't figure out how to change my order. I wanted a burger without pickles, but I kept pressing the screen and nothing happened. It was a bit of a nightmare, honestly. And on top of that, the screen froze for a moment, so I had to start over. I asked a staff member for help, but she looked busy and I didn't want to end up holding up the line behind me. In the end, I just got the normal burger and picked out the pickles myself. I felt a bit silly afterwards. I mean, it's just a machine, right? But when there's a queue behind you, it's really stressful. I think these kiosks are supposed to be faster, but in the first place, they should be easier for everyone to use.
A warm, friendly British English host in his late 30s, a favourite teacher chatting with a student. Thank you. Let's talk a bit more about technology in general. Why do you think some older people struggle with new technology?
Well, I think it's because they didn't grow up with it. So for them, even small things like smartphones can feel a bit confusing. And also, the design often changes too fast, which makes it harder to keep up.
That's interesting. Do you think companies should make technology easier for everyone to use?
Yes, definitely. Not everyone is good with gadgets. So if companies made the screens simpler, more people could use them. For example, bigger buttons and clearer words would help a lot.
And do you think people today rely too much on technology?
Yeah, probably. I can't even remember my friends' phone numbers because they're all in my phone. And we use apps for everything: food, taxis, even paying. So if our phones died, it would be a real problem.
Thank you, Gia. That's the end of the speaking test.
All right, nice work there, Gia. Before we wrap up, let's go back and look at a few of the expressions you used. I want you to really lock these in.
Yes, please. I'd love to get these down properly.
A bit of a nightmare. An informal British idiom for something really stressful or frustrating.
It was a bit of a nightmare, honestly.
Oh, right, yeah. I remember seeing that.
And one more example to bank. The booking app kept crashing. It was a bit of a nightmare trying to finish the reservation.
Second up, figure out how to. To work out or discover a way to do something, usually with some trial and error.
The thing is, I couldn't figure out how to change my order.
That one just slipped out, honestly.
One more example to bank. It took me a while to figure out how to transfer my photos to the new phone.
End up. To arrive at a state or result you didn't plan on, usually the ending of a short story or anecdote.
I asked a staff member for help, but she looked busy and I didn't want to end up holding up the line behind me.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of that one.
And one more example to bank. I meant to cook dinner, but I ended up ordering takeaway instead. Fourth up, in the first place, looking back to the beginning of a situation, often used with a mild complaint or reflective comment.
I think these kiosks are supposed to be faster, but in the first place, they should be easier for everyone to use.
I didn't even plan that. It just felt natural.
And one more example to bank. Why did I buy the fancy blender in the first place if I only use it once a month?
Good afternoon. Could I have your full name, please?
Yes, my name is Gia. You can call me Gia.
Thank you, Gia. I'd like to ask you a few questions about advice. Do you often ask other people for advice?
I'd say it depends on what's at stake. For big career moves, definitely. I'll usually run the decision past one or two people I trust before I commit. But, day-to-day stuff, I tend to figure out on my own.
Who do you usually go to when you need advice?
I'd say, older colleagues mostly, to be brutally honest. My friends are great, but they're often going through the same things I am, so a fresh perspective from someone a bit further along just lands differently.
And do you find it easy to follow advice once you've received it?
Not always, no. Hearing the advice is the easy part. Actually applying it when the moment hits is a different challenge entirely. I think I've gotten better at it with practice, but I wouldn't say it comes naturally.
Now, I'd like you to talk about a topic for 1 to 2 minutes. Here is your cue card. Describe a piece of advice you received that has helped you. You should say who gave you the advice, when they gave it, what the advice was, and explain how it has helped you. You have 1 minute to prepare. You can start speaking when you are ready.
Okay, so the piece of advice that's really stuck with me came from an old manager of mine, back when I was a junior researcher. This was probably 3 years ago now. I'd just been offered a project I felt completely underqualified for, and I went into her office basically to ask permission to turn it down. She heard me out, then said something like, "If a role doesn't scare you a little, you're probably not aiming high enough." And then she added, and this part really got me, "Take any advice with a grain of salt, including mine. Just don't let your own fear be the loudest voice in the room." I remember walking out of that meeting and just sort of sitting in the lobby for 10 minutes processing it. I took the project in the end. It went fine. Not amazing, not a disaster. But in hindsight, the project itself wasn't the point. The point was that she'd handed me a kind of mental shortcut for any decision where I felt out of my depth. What's interesting is, I don't even work with her anymore. She moved companies a couple of years back. But that one line has stuck with me longer than almost any feedback I've gotten since. I'd say it's because it wasn't just career advice. It was, a frame for thinking about risk in general. Whenever I catch myself shrinking away from something, I hear her voice. And 9 times out of 10, that's the thing I should actually be doing.
And do you still keep in touch with that manager?
I'd say mostly through messages, once or twice a year. But the relationship has shifted. She's more of a mentor now than a manager, which is probably the healthier version of it.
Let's broaden the discussion. Do you think people generally listen to advice when it's given to them?
I'd say not always, at least not in the moment. People tend to ask for advice when they're already leaning a particular way, so they're really looking for confirmation, not direction. That said, even if it doesn't land that day, good advice has a way of coming back to you later, when you're actually ready to hear it.
What would you say is the difference between advice from a parent and advice from a colleague?
That's a good one. Parental advice tends to be values-driven, about who you are, who you should become, whereas colleagues are more situational, about how to navigate this specific room or this specific decision. Both matter, but you weigh them differently. With colleagues, in hindsight, you sometimes realize they had blind spots. With parents, the blind spots are kind of baked in, but the love behind it gives the advice a different kind of weight.
Should young people always follow the advice of older people?
Not blindly, no. The world young people are stepping into is genuinely different from the one their parents trained for, especially with how fast careers and tools are shifting now. Older advice is valuable as data, but it shouldn't be treated as a finished answer. The skill is filtering, keeping what still applies, gently letting go of what doesn't.
Has the way people give and receive advice changed because of social media?
Massively, I'd say. Social media has turned almost everyone into an advice giver, which is, a mixed bag. There's much more access to specialized perspectives than there used to be. But you also get a kind of advice overload, where every algorithm is shouting a different right answer at you. So you have to take most of what you scroll past with a grain of salt and be really intentional about whose voice you actually let in.
Thank you, Gia. That is the end of the speaking test.
All right, nice work there, Gia. Before we wrap up, let's go back and look at a few of the expressions you used. I want you to really lock these in.
Yes, please. I'd love to get these down properly.
To be brutally honest. Older colleagues, mostly, to be brutally honest.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember saying that.
And one more example to bank. To be brutally honest, I prefer working from home. The office routine never really suited me.
Second up, with a grain of salt. Idiom, to consider information with healthy skepticism without taking it as fully reliable.
She heard me out, then said something like, if a role doesn't scare you a little, you're probably not aiming high enough. And then she added, and this part really got me, take any advice with a grain of salt, including mine.
That one just slipped out, honestly.
And one more example to bank. Most online product reviews should be taken with a grain of salt. There's a lot of marketing dressed up as opinion.
In hindsight, looking back with the benefit of knowing what happened next.
But in hindsight, the project itself wasn't the point. The point was that she'd handed me a kind of mental shortcut for any decision where I felt out of my depth.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of that one.
And one more example to bank. In hindsight, turning down that role would have been a mistake.
Stuck with me. Phrasal collocation. Of a thought, line or moment stayed with me and continued to influence me.
Okay, so the piece of advice that's really stuck with me came from an old manager of mine back when I was a junior researcher.
I didn't even plan that. It just felt natural.
And one more example to bank. Her line about fear being the loudest voice in the room has stuck with me ever since.
Good afternoon. Could I have your full name, please?
Yes, my name is Gia. You can call me Gia.
Thank you, Gia. I'd like to ask you a few questions about reading. Do you enjoy reading books?
Yeah, I really do. I read most evenings before bed. Usually fiction, sometimes a magazine if I'm too tired. It's one of the easiest ways for me to switch off.
When do you usually find time to read?
Mostly at night, like I said, but also on the train when I commute because, well, otherwise I just scroll on my phone. Reading on the train feels more kind of productive.
Have your reading habits changed since you were a child?
Yeah, I think so. As a kid, I read fast and finished books in one sitting. Now I'm slower. I take notes sometimes, and I keep coming back to the same titles every couple of years.
Now, I'd like you to talk about a topic for 1 to 2 minutes. Here is your cue card. Describe a book you have read more than once. You should say what the book is, when you first read it, how many times you have read it, and explain why you have read it more than once. You have 1 minute to prepare. You can start speaking when you are ready.
Okay, so the book I want to talk about is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I first read it when I was 17. My older cousin gave it to me as a birthday gift. At the time, I just read it because I felt I had to, but I remember finishing it in 2 days. I literally couldn't put it down. Since then, I think I've read it 3, maybe 4 times. Once in college, once after I graduated, and again last year when I was thinking about a job change. It's the kind of book that hits differently every time, depending on where you are in life. The first time, it was about adventure. The second time, it was more about fear. And now it feels more like a book about patience. To be honest, I don't think it's the best written novel. The prose is actually pretty simple. But for me, that's part of why I love it.
And do you usually finish books once you start them?
Most of the time, yeah. But if a book doesn't grab me in the first 30 pages, I'll usually put it aside. Life's too short, you know?
Let's broaden the discussion a bit. Why do you think people read books?
I think there are a few reasons. Some people read to relax, like me. Others read to learn, for example, business or science books. And some people read to escape from real life, especially fiction. So, in a nutshell, books give people things they can't really get from a phone screen.
Are paper books still important in the digital age?
Yeah, for me, they still matter. I have an e-reader, but I only really fall in love with a book when I have a paper copy. There's something about the smell and the weight that you just don't get from a screen. But honestly, e-readers are more convenient when you travel.
How do you think parents can encourage children to read?
I think the easiest way is to let kids pick their own books. If a parent forces a kid to read something boring, they'll, just give up. But if the kid finds a book they really love, that habit kind of sticks. Also, reading together at bedtime helps a lot when they're young.
Has the way people read books changed in recent years?
Yeah, definitely. People read more on phones now, Twitter, articles, that kind of thing. But for actual books, I'd say fewer people sit down and read for hours. We're, more distracted these days. Even so, audiobooks are getting really popular, especially for people who commute. So in some ways, books are still everywhere, just in a different format.
Thank you, Gia. That is the end of the speaking test.
All right, nice work there, Gia. Before we wrap up, let's go back and look at a few of the expressions you used. I want you to really lock these in.
Yes, please. I'd love to get these down properly.
Couldn't put it down. Idiom of a book was so engrossing I had to keep reading.
I literally couldn't put it down.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember saying that.
And one more example to bank. I started it on a Friday evening and just couldn't put it down. Finished the whole thing by Sunday.
A book of the type that. It's the kind of book that hits differently every time, depending on where you are in life.
That one just slipped out, honestly.
And one more example to bank. It's the kind of book that hits differently every time you read it.
Keep coming back to. Phrasal collocation. Return to repeatedly because of ongoing appeal.
Now I'm slower, I take notes sometimes, and I keep coming back to the same titles every couple of years.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of that one.
And one more example to bank. I keep coming back to the same handful of books every couple of years. They grow up with me.
In a nutshell.
So, in a nutshell, books give people things they can't really get from a phone screen.
I didn't even plan that. It just felt natural.
Now, one more example to bank. In a nutshell, books give people something a phone screen can't. Time to actually think. Good afternoon. Could I have your full name, please?
Yes, my name is Gia. You can call me Gia.
Thank you, Gia. Let's talk a little about work. What kind of work do you do?
I'd say I'm a UX researcher at a small design studio. So my job is basically interviewing users and figuring out, why a product feels frustrating to use, and turning that into something the design team can actually act on. I really enjoy it, to be honest.
And what is a typical day like for you?
It depends on the project, really. Usually, I'd have a couple of user interviews in the morning, and the afternoons are for writing up findings or syncing with designers. Probably more screen time than I'd like, honestly.
Now, I'd like you to talk about a topic for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you'll have 1 minute to prepare. You can make some notes if you wish. Here's your topic. Describe a person who has had a big influence on your life. You should say who the person is, how you met them, what they did to influence you, and explain why their influence has stayed with you. Please begin when you're ready.
Right, so I want to talk about my first manager. Her name was Mira, and she was a senior designer at the company I joined right after university. This would have been about 4 years ago. Honestly, when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd come from a research background, not design, and the team mostly worked in this fast, kind of opinionated way that I just wasn't used to. I think Mira could see I was overwhelmed in my first month, and she basically took me under her wing, set up weekly one-on-ones, walked me through how feedback worked in the team, that kind of thing. The thing is, what she taught me wasn't really about design. It was more about how to actually communicate at work. I remember in one of my first design reviews, I disagreed with a senior person and said it really bluntly. I thought I was being clear and direct, but apparently I came across as kind of aggressive. And she pulled me aside afterwards and gently explained how to disagree without making it personal. That conversation honestly made me see the whole feedback culture in a new light. She left the company about a year later, but we still meet up every couple of months for coffee. That stuck with me, that even when someone moves on, the influence doesn't really go away. I'd say almost every time I have to give difficult feedback now, even on Slack, I sort of hear her voice in my head asking, is this useful or just clever? It's a small thing, but it's shaped how I work.
A warm, friendly British English host in his late 30s, a favourite teacher chatting with a student. Thank you. Let's talk a bit more broadly about influence. Who tends to become a role model for young people in society today?
That's an interesting one. I'd say it's shifted quite a bit. When I was younger, role models were mostly teachers or maybe public figures, athletes, that kind of thing. But now, with social media being what it is, a lot of young people look up to creators and influencers, which I think is, well, it's a mixed thing. To be fair, some of them are genuinely thoughtful, but the line between role model and entertainer has gotten kind of blurry.
And do you think parents or teachers have more influence on a young person's character?
I'd say it depends on the age, really. For younger children, definitely parents. That's their whole world, basically. But once they hit, secondary school, I think peers and teachers start mattering a lot more. Honestly, looking back, my high school English teacher probably shaped how I think more than my parents did, just because she was the first adult who treated me like an adult.
Has the type of person young people look up to changed in recent years?
Massively, yeah. I mean, even 5 years ago, you'd ask a teenager who they admired, and they'd probably name a singer or a footballer. Now it's like this YouTuber who teaches them about money, or a Twitch streamer they feel connected to. The personalness of it is what's new, I think. Whether that's healthy or not, I'm not entirely sure.
Thank you, Gia. That's the end of the speaking test.
All right, nice work there, Gia. Before we wrap up, let's go back and look at a few of the expressions you used. I want you to really lock these in.
Yes, please. I'd love to get these down properly.
Took me under her wing. Now, Gia, what does this actually paint in your head?
Kind of like someone protecting you, like a mother bird with a chick.
It's an idiom for when an experienced person personally takes responsibility for guiding someone newer. The wing part is key. It implies care, not just instruction.
Oh, so it's warmer than just mentored me.
Right, much warmer. And you used it beautifully in your part 2. You said, quote, she basically took me under her wing, set up weekly one-on-ones. That landed perfectly.
Yeah, that one just felt like the right phrase.
Most band lift. Most candidates default to she helped me a lot or she taught me. Both fine, both flat. Took me under her wing shows you can use a vivid idiom in a natural context, which is a band 7 marker.
So I'd say I should save it for genuine mentor relationships, right?
Exactly. Reserve it for cases where there's genuine personal investment. Don't use it for a casual classmate or a one-off colleague. The warmth becomes ironic if the relationship was minor. One more to bank. When I joined the lab, my supervisor took me under her wing for the first 6 months.
When I joined the lab, my supervisor took me under her wing for the first 6 months.
Beautiful. That's yours now. Made me see something in a new light. Gia, what kind of moment does this describe?
I think when something changes how you understand a thing, like a perspective shift.
Spot on. It's the language of cognitive shift, a moment where a familiar thing suddenly looks different.
Oh, that's exactly the moment I was trying to describe.
Yeah, and you nailed it. You said, quote, that conversation honestly made me see the whole feedback culture in a new light. That single phrase did a lot of work.
I'd say, I was actually reaching for something stronger than changed my mind.
And that's exactly the upgrade. Changed my mind is binary, yes or no. Made me see X in a new light is layered, suggests a gradual shift. That's a clean band 7 signal.
I'd say, anything I should watch out for?
One thing, make sure the X is concrete. Saying, it made me see life in a new light is too vague. Anchor it. The feedback culture. My own ambition. Tokyo. Specific objects make the phrase land.
Living abroad made me see my own country in a new light.
Living abroad made me see my own country in a new light.
Lovely. Use it whenever you describe a turning point.
Haha, that stuck with me. Gia, what feeling does this carry?
Something I can't forget, or maybe something that keeps coming back to me.
Both. It's used for moments or lessons that have stayed with you long after the original event. Not just memorable, actively shaping how you think now.
Oh, like a quote a teacher said years ago that you still think about?
Exactly. And you used it really well in your part 2. You said, quote, that stuck with me, that even when someone moves on, the influence doesn't really go away.
Yeah, I wanted something more emotional than just, I remember it.
And that's the lift. I remember it is neutral. That stuck with me. Tells the examiner the lesson was personally significant. You're showing emotional range, not just narrative range.
Got it. So it's good for the reflective parts of an answer.
Right, perfect for part 2 wrap-ups or part 3 reflections, but don't use it for trivial things. That movie's stuck with me works. That sandwich has stuck with me sounds odd. The moment needs weight. My grandfather once told me to choose work that excites me. That stuck with me.
I'd say, my grandfather once told me to choose work that excites me. That stuck with me.
Beautiful. That's a band 7 closer right there.
To be fair, when do you think a native speaker reaches for this phrase?
When they want to balance what they just said, like give credit to the other side.
Exactly. It's a discourse marker that signals nuance. You're saying, okay, I made a strong claim, but here's the qualification. Examiners love it because it shows you can hold 2 ideas at once.
Oh, so it's not just a filler. It's doing real work.
Real work, yeah. And you slipped it in nicely in your part 3. You said, quote, to be fair, some of them are genuinely thoughtful, but the line between role model and entertainer has gotten kind of blurry.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to acknowledge the good ones without dropping my main point about the blurry line.
And that's exactly what To Be Fair does. The Band 6 version would be, but some are good. Flat. Yours has a built-in concession that makes you sound more thoughtful and balanced.
Got it. So how often should I actually be using it in a real Part 3 answer?
Once or twice per part 3 is the sweet spot. Use it more and it loses its weight, and only when you're actually qualifying a strong opinion, not just to start a sentence.
My commute is exhausting. To be fair, the company does let me work from home twice a week.
I'd say, my commute is exhausting. To be fair, the company does let me work from home twice a week.
Perfect. That's a Band 7 hedge in your toolkit.